elderly black man humiliated because of his color. He said 5 words that made the SWAT team freeze. "Hey, Grandpa, I think you're in the wrong place, the nursing home is across town," shouted one of the police officers, provoking laughter among the other officers who formed a perimeter around the building. Wilson, 72, stood motionless in front of the yellow tape cordoning off the residential building. His tired eyes watched intently as the SWAT team frantically prepared to storm the apartment, where a gunman was holding 3 hostages. The men in tactical gear checked their weapons, adjusted their bulletproof vests, and received final instructions. "Sir, I need you to step back, this is a restricted area," said a younger officer, approaching with an impatient expression. "I live there," Robert replied calmly, pointing to one of the apartments on the 2nd floor. The young policeman looked at his colleagues and laughed. "Sure you do. And I'm Batman. Now get out of here before I have to remove you." Robert adjusted his worn hat and took a step back. It wasn't the first time he had been treated this way, with contempt, as if his age and color made him invisible, incapable, or a liar. He had noticed how the police officers greeted the other white residents of the building cordially, accepting their words without question, while he was met with suspicion and scorn. Across the street, a man in a suit watched everything closely. Captain Richards, head of the operation, spoke quickly on the phone while consulting building plans spread out on the hood of a police car. The tension was palpable. 3 hours of negotiations and no progress. "Last attempt to make contact failed," announced a police officer over the radio. No response from the suspect. "Delta team in position." Robert watched the special forces move and shook his head slightly. He noticed something that no one else seemed to see: the position of the teams, the planned angle of entry, the lack of cover at certain points. His experienced eyes picked up details that went unnoticed by the young officers. "This is going to go wrong," he muttered to himself. "What hidden truth will this elderly man reveal?" Stay tuned to Black Voices to uncover the mystery. A month earlier, Robert had noticed a strange man entering the building several times during the early hours of the morning. He tried to alert security but was dismissed with a wave of a hand and "I'll check it out later." That never happened. 2 weeks ago, he noticed the smell of chemicals coming from apartment 402. Again, his concerns were ignored. Now here he was watching a tragedy unfold. "Team ready to enter in 60 seconds, announced a voice over the radio. That was when Robert made his decision. He walked determinedly toward the police tape and crossed it with a quick movement that surprised everyone. "Hey, stop!" shouted a police officer, running toward him. 2 officers grabbed him by the arms. "What the hell do you think you're doing, old man?" Captain Richards approached, annoyed by the interruption. "Get this man away from here now. You'll all die if you go in there like that," said Robert, his calm voice contrasting with the chaos around him. "What are you talking about?" asked Richards contemptuously. "I've known this building for 40 years. I worked on it. There's a passageway between apartments 402 and 404 that isn't on the blueprints." He set a trap. The captain looked at Robert with disdain. "Look, we have an expert here. Someone take this gentleman." Robert interrupted him. "You should listen to someone before judging by appearances. I saw the suspect carrying chemicals last week. I tried to warn you, and why should we believe you?" asked Richards. That's when Robert said 5 words that made everyone around him freeze. "Delta Force Commander. Operation Storm." The silence was instantaneous as Captain Richards' eyes widened in recognition. The look of disdain was replaced by shock and confusion. What those police officers didn't know was that behind that ordinary-looking elderly black man lay a past that would completely change the course of that operation, and his attitude would be just the beginning of a lesson that none of them would soon forget. If this story about prejudice and respect touched you, be sure to sign up to Black Voices to find out how a moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a turnaround that no one could have ever expected. What shocking revelation awaits this team? Keep watching on Black Voices to find out. In Robert's 5 words, there was a code that few knew. Delta Force Commander. Operation Tempest was not just a statement, it was a hidden identity, a buried past that no one on that street could have imagined. Captain Richards blinked rapidly, his expression of disdain replaced by uncertainty. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice faltered. "Sector 7, access code 497, Alpha Charlie." Robert replied calmly, "Check it." The captain took a few steps back and spoke quickly into his radio. Seconds later, his expression changed completely. "Sir," said Richards, returning with a new demeanor, "I apologize for the misunderstanding." The other officers exchanged confused glances. Robert remained impassive. "You have 20 minutes before he detonates the explosives," he said calmly, "and no, they're not just chemicals. I've seen electronic components being brought into that apartment for weeks." Captain Richards ordered everyone to step back, creating an improvised space where Robert could speak. A young female officer watched everything with particular attention. "Lieutenant Maya Cruz," she introduced herself, "negotiation specialist. If you really know this building, we need you." Robert nodded, recognizing in the young officer something that was missing in the others: genuine respect. "Apartment 402 has a structural flaw," Robert explained. "During construction, there was a mistake in the blueprints. There's a space between the walls of 402 and 404 that doesn't appear on any floor plans. Access is through the ventilation panel in the bathroom of 404. Lieutenant Carter, who had mocked him, approached skeptically. "So now we're entrusting our operation to an old man who claims to have been some kind of special soldier. This is ridiculous," he muttered to Captain Richards. "Lieutenant," Richards replied quietly, "I just received direct confirmation from operations. This man was one of the most decorated commanders in the Special Forces. Operation Tempest 1982, top secret." The revelation did not calm Carter. On the contrary, it increased his resentment. A black man, an elderly man they had ridiculed, was now in command of the situation. "He may have been important in the past," Carter insisted, "but that was 40 years ago. Tactics have changed." Robert listened silently as he continued to explain details of the building to Lieutenant Cruz. She absorbed every word, drawing up an alternative plan. He could be bluffing about the explosives, Carter argued. "No," Robert interrupted, "you have visual confirmation, you just didn't notice it." Calmly, he took an analyst's tablet and zoomed in on the image of the window of apartment 402. On the windowsill, almost imperceptible, was a small device. "Motion sensor," he explained, "connected to a detonator. This man has military training." Lieutenant Cruz examined the image. "He's right. How did we miss that?" While the team reconfigured their strategy, Robert sat down on a nearby bench. The pain in his knee, a reminder of a grenade fragment lodged there decades ago, intensified an invisible metal to those who saw only an old man. "Why didn't you ever mention your background before?" Cruz asked, sitting down beside him. Robert smiled slightly. "You think anyone would believe that? An old black man saying he was a Special Forces commander." That's when the radio crackled. "The suspect is demanding to speak to someone named Wilson. He says he knows Robert Wilson. He'll only negotiate with him." All eyes turned to Robert. "Do you know him?" asked Richards. "Simon Mercer," Robert replied calmly, "former military. We served together a long time ago." Lieutenant Cruz studied Robert's calm face. "You knew he would ask for you, didn't you?" Robert didn't answer directly. For weeks, he had silently observed Mercer's movements, connecting dots that no one else noticed. Every chemical, every electronic component, they were signals that only someone with his training would recognize. "Let me talk to him," Robert said, rising with determination. What no one could have imagined was that while the police wasted time debating the credibility of an elderly black man, Robert Wilson was already several steps ahead, because while they judged him by his appearance, he was quietly drawing on decades of experience in operations that would never make it into the history books. And in his pocket, folded carefully, was a small piece of paper with 5 words different from the ones he had spoken before. 5 words that at the right moment would change everything again. Robert adjusted his bulletproof vest and tested his communicator. Hostage negotiation protocol required him to remain behind the police barricade, but he knew that wouldn't work with Mercer. "I'm not staying here," he said, removing the communicator from his ear. "I'm going in." "Absolutely not," protested Captain Richards. "It's against all protocols. Your protocols don't work with Simon Mercer." Robert replied calmly, "He was trained to resist those techniques. I trained him," and absolute silence fell over the team. Lieutenant Cruz looked at Robert with new understanding. "You were his instructor," she concluded. Robert nodded slightly. "Operation Blackhawk 1987. I trained a special unit for infiltration and extraction. Mercer was my best student until Beirut." Cruz consulted her tablet quickly. "There are no records of an operation in Beirut during that period." "Exactly," Robert replied, his eyes distant for a moment. "Some operations never officially existed." Carter laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. We're not going to let this man in based on stories about secret operations we can't verify." "We've already verified his identity," Richards interrupted. "If he says he knows Mercer, I believe him." Robert checked his weapon, not a standard issue gun, but one Captain Richards had specially requested from the armory after his identity had been confirmed. "I have 15 minutes, Robert said. "If I'm not out of there with the hostages by then, you do what you have to do." As he approached the building, Robert remained completely calm. Under the incredulous gaze of the police officers, he simply walked up to the main entrance. "He's committing suicide," muttered Carter, watching through his binoculars. "No," replied Cruz, "he's doing something none of us could do. He's speaking the same language as the kidnapper." In the lobby of the building, Robert advanced with steady steps. He didn't hide or crouch, he simply walked as if he were going to get the mail. "Simon," he called in a steady voice as he reached the fourth floor. "It's me, Wilson." Through the closed door of apartment 402, a hoarse voice replied, "Commander, is that really you in the flesh? Open the door." "How do I know it's not a trap?" Robert smiled slightly. "Eagle, November 7th Alpha." A silence, then the sound of several locks being opened. The door opened slightly, revealing a thin man with gray hair and feverish eyes. "Simon Mercer, former Special Forces soldier, now a man on the verge of collapse." "Commander," he muttered, saluting instinctively, "they said you were dead." "Almost." "Come in." Inside the apartment, 3 hostages sat on the floor, bound but unharmed. Robert assessed the situation with a single glance. 2 explosive charges on the windows, 1 on the back door, motion sensors on all entrances. "Why, Simon?" "They abandoned us, Commander. After Beirut, they wiped our records, denied us treatment. I faked my death." "But the voices won't stop." Robert nodded, understanding. "Untreated post-traumatic stress disorder, a soldier abandoned by the system he helped protect." "I saw you weeks ago," Robert said. "I recognized the signs." Simon laughed bitterly. "And I recognized you, the legendary Commander Wilson, reduced to an old guard that no one respects. That's how they treat us when we're no longer useful outside." The SWAT team was taking up position. Carter had convinced Richards that the negotiation had failed. "He's not coming back," Carter insisted. "He's probably already dead." "We need to go in now. We still have 7 minutes. Cruz protested. "We can't risk any more lives because of a stubborn old man," Carter replied, taking command of the tactical operation. Inside the apartment, Robert sat calmly across from Simon. "They're getting ready to storm the place," he said calmly. "Then we'll all die," replied Simon, showing him the detonator in his hand. "I have sensors on all the entrances. If they try, this place will be reduced to dust." Robert nodded. "I know, but you've forgotten something important I taught you." "What?" "Always check for hidden passages." Simon's eyes widened in understanding. Too late, he realized his mistake. Robert moved with surprising speed. There was no sign of age or pain in his movements, only lethal precision. In 3 seconds, Simon was disarmed, the detonator secure in Robert's hand. Outside the building, the SWAT team, led by Carter, advanced through the main entrance. Their radios crackled with an urgent alert. "Abort, abort entry. I repeat, abort entry." It was Lieutenant Cruz's voice. "Keep going," Carter ordered. "We're not backing down now." The team hesitated, torn between conflicting orders. Then they heard 5 words over the radio, spoken in Robert Wilson's calm voice. "Black Lamb, Abort immediately, explosives. The SWAT team froze instantly. Those weren't ordinary words, it was a high-level emergency code known only to elite operators. Carter looked confused at his paralyzed men. "What are you doing?" "Move forward, sir," replied one of the men, removing his helmet. That code is only used in situations of confirmed nuclear or chemical threat. It's Delta Protocol. At that moment, the main door of the building swung open. Robert Wilson emerged calmly, guiding three disoriented but unharmed hostages. Behind him, handcuffed and head bowed, Simon Mercer walked silently. The scene seemed unreal. An elderly black man who hours earlier had been treated with contempt now commanded the absolute respect of the entire tactical team. While medics attended to the hostages, Robert handed the detonator and a small notebook to Captain Richards. 3 weeks of planning, enough explosives to destroy half a block. He needed help, not bullets. Carter remained paralyzed, his arrogance replaced by an expression of shock and shame. The man he had called Grandpa had just done what an entire team couldn't, and as the lights of the police cars lit up the night, one detail did not escape anyone's attention. The way the most experienced members of the SWAT team now addressed Robert, not as Sir or Wilson, but as Commander, with the same reverent respect reserved for living legends. The revelations about Robert Wilson were just beginning. Behind those 5 words that paralyzed an elite team were decades of unrecorded operations, a lifetime dedicated to protecting people who would never know his name. The greatest irony was that the same system he had served faithfully for so many years now treated him as invisible until a crisis demanded a kind of expertise that no training manual could teach. The next morning, Robert Wilson's story hit the front pages of every local newspaper. Forgotten hero, the man everyone ignored, saves hostages. The photo showed a 72-year-old black man being decorated by the mayor in a makeshift ceremony. The police department faced a storm of criticism. Videos of Robert's disrespectful treatment circulated on social media. "Hey, Grandpa" became a symbol of institutional prejudice. Lieutenant Carter was removed from his duties and placed under internal investigation for misconduct and negligence. A week later, Robert received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Wilson, this is the National Security Director. We need to talk about your military record." And Simon Mercer, at the federal office. Robert faced a room full of high-ranking officers. On the screen, classified documents revealed an uncomfortable truth. Simon Mercer wasn't the only one. Dozens of veterans like him had been abandoned after secret operations, their records erased, their medical treatment neglected. The Beirut incident never officially existed, the director explained, "and neither do you." Robert nodded slowly. "And now you want to fix it because it's gone public. We need your help," the director admitted. "You train these men, you know them. Some of them may be planning actions similar to Mercer's." Robert looked at the anxious faces around him. It was the same system that had discarded him as irrelevant, now begging for his help. "I'll help on one condition," he said finally, "a complete reintegration and treatment program for all abandoned operatives, official recognition, retroactive medical benefits that would cost millions. And how many lives will it cost if you don't?" 3 months later, the Tempest program was inaugurated in an inconspicuous building in the city center. Robert Wilson, now director of operations, personally oversaw the location and recovery of dozens of forgotten veterans. Simon Mercer was the first participant, receiving treatment instead of prison. Lieutenant Carter, after an investigation that revealed years of discrimination and abuse of authority, was demoted and transferred to an administrative post at a small rural police station. His ambitions to lead the department evaporated in a single day. "How did you know?" asked Lieutenant Cruz, now a frequent visitor to Robert's office. "How did you know Mercer would choose that particular building?" Robert smiled softly. "Observation, the same apartment he lived in during training 35 years ago. Patterns always tell a story if you pay attention." Cruz nodded, absorbing the lesson. "The department is changing, new training protocols against bias. Your story is being used as a case study." "It's not enough to change protocols," Robert replied. "You have to change hearts." 6 months after the incident, Robert received an honor he never sought. A training room at the police department was named in his honor, the Wilson Hall dedicated to training in observation and pattern recognition. At the ceremony, the new police chief presented Robert with a folder containing a surprising report. Since the implementation of the new protocols, incidents of police violence had fallen by 40%, complaints of discrimination had been reduced by half. A single voice can change an entire system, declared the chief. Your silence taught us more than 1,000 motivational speeches. Robert accepted the honor with the same dignity he had shown on that fateful night. No fanfare, no bragging. Days later, while conducting a class for new recruits, he noticed a young officer in the back row. Lieutenant Carter. Carter, now without his rank insignia, looked smaller, more humble. I requested a transfer to this training, he explained, his former arrogance replaced by something new. I thought maybe I needed to learn to observe better. Robert studied the man for a long moment. Observation begins when you let go of your certainties, he said finally. Welcome. That afternoon, as he drove home, Robert reflected on how a crisis can reveal a person's true character. Some, like Carter, needed to fall to learn. Others, like Cruz, just needed an example to follow. On the wall of his modest apartment, a new photo stood out among the old ones. Robert Wilson receiving a civilian medal of honor alongside 3 hostages who would never know they had almost died because of prejudice. The real victory was not in the medal or the belated recognition, it was in the 5 words that now served as the motto for the Tempest program. Respect is not a rank, because in the end, Robert Wilson didn't have to raise his voice to be heard. His quiet dignity spoke louder than any siren, proving that wisdom gained over a lifetime is more powerful than any weapon, and that true respect is never demanded, but earned through actions that speak when words fail. If this story about prejudice and belated recognition touched you, be sure to subscribe to Black Voices for more stories of justice that show how true strength lies not in humiliating others, but in maintaining your dignity even when the world tries to diminish. Thank you.